everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're strapping on our Babelfish and diving headfirst into the wacky, wonderful world of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by the one and only Douglas Adams.
A deep dive into a comedic science fiction novel.
Yeah.
Now that's what I call thinking outside the box.
Right. You wouldn't think a book about a hitchhiking Earthling and a two-headed galactic president would hold such profound insights. But trust us on this one. It's a wild ride, but it really makes you think about life, the universe, and, well, everything.
It's amazing how Adams manages to blend humor and philosophy so seamlessly. He tackles some pretty heavy questions with such a light, witty touch.
Exactly. Take the importance of towels, for example.
The towels.
Yeah. The book stresses that a towel is like the most essential item for an interstellar hitchhiker. Who would have thought?
You know, at first glance, it seems like just another one of Adams's absurd jokes. But there's a deeper meaning there. The towel represents preparedness, resourcefulness, that little bit of comfort and familiarity we all crave when we're out of our element.
That's such a great point. It's about having that one thing you can rely on in the face of the unknown. And speaking of the unknown, our protagonist Arthur Dent finds himself in quite the predicament when his house is scheduled for demolition to make way for, wait for it, a bypass.
A bypass. As if having your home demolished isn't bad enough, right?
It's the ultimate bureaucratic nightmare. And the way Adams describes the demolition notice being hidden away, it's hilarious. A locked filing cabinet in a disused lavatory with a sign on the door warning of a leopard.
Classic Adams. He uses these absurd scenarios to highlight the ridiculousness of bureaucracy and the often arbitrary nature of rules and regulations.
It's like he's saying, hey, sometimes the universe is just plain nonsensical, so you might as well laugh about it.
Exactly. But before poor Arthur can even process the absurdity of it all, in walks his friend, Ford Prefect, who drops a bombshell.
And what a bombshell it is. Turns out Ford isn't just a bit eccentric, he's an alien researcher who's been stranded on Earth for the past 15 years.
Talk about a plot twist. And what's even more hilarious is that Ford has been researching Earth for this guidebook, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Which, by the way, is a brilliant satirical take on travel guides and encyclopedias. It's packed with witty observations and often questionable advice.
It's like Adams is poking fun at our insatiable need to categorize and explain everything, even in the face of the utterly inexplicable.
And speaking of inexplicable, what happens next is nothing short of, well, absurd. I mean, how do you even begin to explain the Vogons?
Oh, the Vogons, a race of bureaucratic aliens so mind-numbingly dull that their poetry is enough to make you want to launch yourself into a black hole.
It's true. Their poetry is legendary for being utterly atrocious.
And that's precisely the point, isn't it? Adams uses the Vogons' dreadful verse to critique the soul-crushing nature of mindless bureaucracy. It's a reminder that rigid systems and uninspired thinking can stifle creativity and individuality.
It's like he's holding up a mirror to our own world, where we often get so caught up in rules and procedures that we forget to embrace the beauty and wonder of, well, everything.
Speaking of wonder, what about the Babelfish? I mean, instant universal translation by sticking a small fish in your ear. That's pure genius.
Right. You'd think a device like that would solve all our communication problems.
And yet, Adams throws in a clever twist. The Babelfish, despite enabling understanding, actually leads to more wars and conflicts.
It's a hilarious commentary on the complexities of communication. Just because we understand each other's words doesn't mean we truly understand each other.
It's about so much more than just words, isn't it? It's about context, culture, shared experiences.
It's like trying to explain the concept of home to someone who's never had one. No matter how many words you use, something will always be lost in translation.
Exactly. And that's just one of the many thought-provoking ideas Adams packs into this hilarious, mind-bending masterpiece.
Ooh.
So, last we left our intrepid heroes, they were, well, let's just say things weren't looking too rosy. Floating through the infinite void of space, it's enough to make you want to reach for that towel, right?
Talk about a bad case of the Mondays, am I right? But fear not, dear listeners. Just when the existential dread starts to set in, Adams throws us another curveball. A spaceship, powered by something called the infinite improbability drive, scoops them up.
The heart of gold. Now, there's a name that inspires a sense of adventure, but an infinite improbability drive.
It does sound a bit far-fetched, doesn't it?
That's the beauty of Adams' writing. He takes these absurd concepts and somehow makes them feel almost plausible.
And let's not forget the man at the helm of this improbable vessel, Zaphod Beeblebrox. Two-headed, three-armed, semi-galactic president. What's not to love?
Zaphod is a fascinating character, isn't he? On the surface, he's this charming, roguish figure, more concerned with parties and personal gratification than, actual galactic governance.
But there's more to him than meets the eye, right?
Absolutely. Underneath that carefree exterior is a being wrestling with some pretty heavy existential questions. Remember, his desires are being manipulated by subconscious impulses implanted by his predecessor. He's on a quest driven by forces he doesn't even fully understand.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much of our own choices are truly our own?
Precisely. But let's not get too bogged down in the philosophical weeds just yet. We have a supercomputer to talk about.
Deep thought. The computer that spent 7.5 million years calculating the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. The anticipation is killing me. What's the answer?
42.
42. That's it. After all that waiting, all those calculations.
You see, that's the brilliance of it. The absurdity of the answer highlights the futility of seeking simple solutions to complex questions.
It's not about the answer, it's about the journey, right?
In a way, yes. It's about asking the right questions.
Yeah.
About embracing the unknown. And maybe even finding humor in the face of it.
And deep thought did provide one last clue, didn't it? A way to figure out the ultimate question.
Ah, yes, the Earth. Turns out our little blue planet wasn't just a random collection of atoms, but a giant, organic computer designed to calculate the ultimate question.
Which makes it all the more tragic when we find out that Earth was destroyed by the Vogons moments before it could deliver its results.
A cosmic case of bad timing, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Just when we thought we were on the verge of unlocking the universe's greatest secrets.
It's enough to make you question the very nature of existence, isn't it?
And just when you think it can't get any weirder, Adams introduces the beings who commission the Earth to calculate the ultimate question. Mice.
Mice. You mean those furry little creatures that keep stealing my cheese?
The very same.
Yeah.
It turns out they're hyper-intelligent, pan-dimensional beings using Earth as a giant computer. And they're not too happy about its untimely demise.
So now Arthur, our accidental galactic traveler, finds himself the center of attention for these super intelligent rodents. What do they want with him?
Well, as a former inhabitant of Earth, they believe Arthur's brain might hold the key to unlocking the mystery of the ultimate question. Talk about being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Poor Arthur. From bypass protests to intergalactic lab rat, what a wild ride. So picture this. Arthur Dent, ordinary Earthling turned accidental galactic hitchhiker, about to have his brain probed by a group of hyper-intelligent mice. Talk about a cosmic dilemma.
It's enough to make anyone reach for a good, strong cup of tea, wouldn't you say? But, amidst all the absurdity, Adams touches on a pretty profound question. If we had the answer to the universe's biggest mystery, would we even want to know? Or would it be too much to handle?
It's like that saying, be careful what you wish for. Sometimes the not knowing can be a blessing in disguise. But speaking of unexpected twists, what about those galactic policemen who show up on Magrathea?
Ah, yes, the long arm of the law, finally catching up with our dear Zaphod. And leave it to Adams to turn even a police raid into a comedic masterpiece.
It's hilarious how he portrays these officers more interested in poetry slams and existential debates than actually apprehending a fugitive.
They're a perfect example of how Adams uses humor to subvert our expectations. You think you're in for a tense standoff, and suddenly you're chuckling at the absurdity of it all.
But then, just as quickly as they arrive, the policemen, well, they die. Life support systems mysteriously malfunctioning. What did you make of that? A bit ominous, don't you think?
It's certainly a chilling reminder that even in the vastness of space, things can go wrong in the blink of an eye. Whether it was sabotage, some cosmic coincidence, or maybe even a side effect of all that improbability swirling around, well, Adams leaves that up to our imagination.
Talk about leaving you hanging. But hey, at least our heroes managed to escape from Magrathea, right?
Indeed they do. Slartibartfast, the planet designer with a penchant for fjords, swoops in to save the day with his trusty air car. But even as they're escaping, Zaphod is left wrestling with this nagging feeling.
You mean about those implanted subconscious desires?
Exactly. Imagine discovering that your life's ambition, the thing driving you, wasn't even your own choice.
That's a whole new level of existential crisis.
It really makes you question free will, doesn't it? Are we truly in control of our destinies, or are we just puppets dancing to the tune of some unseen force?
In Zaphod's case, it seems like he eventually accepts the absurdity of it all. He decides to embrace the unknown rather than obsess over things he can't control. Kind of a go-with-the-flow approach to galactic living.
Which brings us to the heart of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, wouldn't you say? It's about acknowledging the chaos, finding humor in the face of the inexplicable, and never losing that sense of wonder.
And of course, always knowing where your towel is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you never know when you'll need to dry off after a dip in the cosmic pool of absurdity.
Well said. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into this hilarious, thought-provoking, and surprisingly insightful book, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from it all?
That's a tough one. I suppose it would be this. Don't be afraid to ask the big questions, even if the answers seem elusive. Embrace the absurdity of existence, and never lose your sense of humor. Because in the grand scheme of things, as Douglas Adams so brilliantly reminds us, it's all a bit silly, isn't it?
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the infinite improbabilities of your own existence. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time, don't panic.